All right. You were raised in deception. Part 1, The Lies. You were born into a cult. Society, structure, the structure of society. This particular cult, anytime they see outside of the norm thinking, outside of the range that their mental blocks are forcing them to not comprehend, they will see you as different. They will see you as possibly even the weirdo. Anytime you think, talk, act, behave, believe something outside of the script, say something outside of the script, they're going to tell you, where's your source? Where's the source? Because I'm trying to figure out what you're saying and what you're telling me, but I'm trying to Google it and do my research, but the Google script is not giving me an answer. This way, society controls itself. The elites no longer have to work and maintain. Everything goes full circle. On to the next. So, before I start the video, I'd like to start my little quote to kind of pass a disclaimer, I guess. So, all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. And third, it is accepted as being self-evident. So, self-evident meaning the dots connect. It doesn't need to explain itself. The dots connect and it runs through the ether and the energy, and it kind of just spreads, and finally the norms might get it. You get mocked. First it's ridiculed. You may get called weird. You're seen as maybe stupid. Oh, that's dumb. It's outside the script, and what are you telling me? I Googled it, and I can't seem to be creative enough and critically think, and this Google script's not telling me what's going on about it, so it's just dumb. I can't really do my own experiments. I can't see for myself because I gotta go to work, and I'm just too tired to do my own experiments and be creative enough to and critically think. So I'm just gonna Google it. Oh, it's not in the script. It must be false. It just sounds dumb. Type shit. Second, it is violently opposed. We've seen in the past people get blacklisted. You make a water-powered engine. You put it in a car. You make a water-powered car, and you just get killed. And it's nothing. It's no secret. Someone makes a documentary about it on YouTube. If you don't know, someone has made a water-powered car and they've been killed. Someone made a documentary about it. They don't even try to hide it, And third is it's accepted as being self-evident. I've already explained that. And also, I'm not going to go into detail with this video. If there's stuff you don't know, do your own research. I like to keep it short. Your belief is your belief. Anyways, so the truth is right in front of you. You just have to change perspective to see it. So I got a picture of a guy that sees 4 blocks. And then on the other side, there's a guy that sees 3 blocks. And then a 6 and a 9. So if you want to see the truth, you just have to alter the way you see things. You know, you got to get rid of the mental blocks that they put in front of you. You got to get rid of the consensus, because obviously the consensus is what keeps the structure and the mental blocks and the NPC script. So how do we change our perspective? So first we need to alter the way we see things. Right? So there seems to be a lot of lies. There seems to be some mental blocks. You know, when you take a test and you get a question and you have 4 options, you know, a good way to answer the question is to simplify it by canceling out the 3 other options and finding the one that most likely is the answer. So that translates to, in order to figure out the truth, you must first find out what isn't. So in order to simplify this, what are the scams? What are the lies? Because there seems to be some fishiness going on, obviously. So let's jump right into it. The news. X did this, so this is why this is happening. So we need you to pick a side for you. So that way you can feel like there's no agendas going on and that the country is in good hands of people that actually see the same as you. You know, they care. And, you know, I just got a picture. You know, it speaks for itself. I just got a picture of a lady with her psychopath smile and her script and her paper ready to go, her notes. You know, obviously she has no idea what's actually going on. She's just reading a script and willing to do anything to keep the dough rolling in for her greed. Ooh. On to the next. Education. So history, you know. The fake biology. History. His story. You know, English is the joke. English is the master joke language, you know. So let's do some measuring here. Let's do some me assuring. You know, history, because the reason this all makes sense is because this happened, and the reason this structure is here is because this happened. And if you don't know this story, if you don't finish this degree, if you don't do this education, you're not going to be able to get a job. You got to know this story in order to have a job, because you totally need it to do your job. You know, if you don't know A plus B equals C squared or whatever, then you can't do your job, even though 99% of the jobs aren't going to require that equation. 99% of the jobs don't need you to know this BS, this fakery, in the first place in order to do them. Basically, it all boils down to the fact that if you don't have the mental blocks, the system's not going to reward you, because obviously this system rewards compliance. You know, your grades are a measurement of your compliance, not your ability to think, not how smart you are. Matter of fact, education is developed to make you unable to critically think. You get thrown a test. You get a question. You have 4 options. All you have to do is pick out of the 4, and you can cancel out which one. It's pretty easy. That's not critically thinking. That's compliance. That's picking an option that they gave you. That's not... Critically thinking is the opposite. Critically thinking is coming up with your own answer based on the information you received. It's pretty obvious. It's actually quite funny because you can pass this education with receiving little information and processing it. But if you do that, you're more free. You have less mental blocks. So these grades and all that, jobs are going to look at that, and the system's going to go, well, you can only get this level of job and not the higher paying one because the system doesn't want smart people out here with money. They want compliance. And I'm not saying that dumb people, I'm not saying rich people are dumb, but what I am saying is that anything outside of consensus is not rewarded because they obviously don't want the truth spitting out and they don't want revolt. And if you don't have this one in the back of your head, then you're just a lost cause. Schizo alert. On to the next. Virology. So, I can't really explain this one at all, but I'm just going to say there is no such thing as a pathogenic virus. There is no such thing as a pathogenic period. On to the next. Okay, so for this one, I can't tell you. I can't say the line because YouTube will remove this. And if I try and get into extreme detail here, the YouTube will review it. And the elites will put this. They'll still allow it to post, but the algorithm will not allow people to see it. So I guess you can read the title as the myth. Guess I'll say germs is X, so X theory, still a theory till this day, because it still has not been proven as fact. So your whole health system runs on theories now. And this is so that you can get your microbiome fully shut down by chemicals, so that anytime you go outside of the system health-wise and you go out into your own environment created by God, you will be attacked by your own harmony. You go out and now all of a sudden the allergens are attacking you because you have no microbiome, because it has been wiped out from the soaps and all that. You go out in the wild and all these wild animals are just doing fine and chilling. Except for you. I put a little side quote. Washing your hands is very important so you don't get sick, but forget about the chemicals in the food. You need to kill them germs. All right. Legal authority. So this one's kind of a 50-50. So, this whole structure that we got going on, the way society controls itself, is based on structures that began at a time where the legal authority basically had everyone convinced that they aren't a sovereign being, that if a police officer tells you what to do, you do it, even though you didn't commit a crime. But nowadays, it's a little bit more transparent than that, and people are exercising their rights. But the myth of authority, you're a sovereign being. Nobody actually has the right to tell you what to do. It's just the myth that's implemented into the NPC script for compliance, and makes it to where when an NPC hears someone tell them what to do, for some reason legitimacy goes into their brain, like the authority is legitimate, even though it has no more legitimacy than themselves. And this is how society controls itself. On to the next. This is what you live on, some globe. The masters of psychological manipulation have made it extremely difficult to figure this one out. If you try and do some clues, not research, but some clues, and you go on YouTube, you get broadcasted to straw man channels created by agents that aren't even actual flat earthers. You get broadcasted to channels with, it gets really deep. You get broadcasted to channels with experiments and arguments that are blatantly retarded, and the actual experiments are deep down off the algorithm, in fact. They'll even IQ test you, as seen in this picture. They'll give you a 1972 picture all the way to pictures up to 2015. And they'll put Africa as different colors in all of them, and then even in different shapes and in different sizes, just to see if people start to notice, and no one notices. That way, when people start talking about it, they know the buttons to pull, they know the cards to play. They're reaction experimenting. It's advanced level mind control 101. On to the next. Ooh, schizo alert. So why? That's a big scale. Like that's a lot. All for controlling the minds. That's a lot of mind control going on. Why? But why? What's the point? So what if the earth is... So what? Well, simply put, those who know the least obey the best. Those who know the least are the rewarded. Those who know the least, the unable to critically think, the uncreative, are typically the ones with a sense of entitlement, because the system rewards them like spoiled children. Meanwhile, the creative, independent thinkers are frowned upon and are usually at the lower financial level and lower class. You just can't have smart people out here with money and being the role model for the kids. The kids and the children of the system must manifest into obedient slave consensus followers. So they do all this because they want you to feel insignificant. All this mind controls so you can feel insignificant. And they have other psychological manipulation going on with the Big Bang. And then all of a sudden this tree of life came. And then a monkey came. And then you evolved all the way from a monkey into what you are now. So the Big Bang, a ball just magically hit an asteroid or whatever, and then burst out, and then all of a sudden fell into a magnetic orbit. And then now all these 7 other balls are in perfect orbit, and they've just been like that for millions of years. And they're totally up on a moon. And then some pond scum developed in a lake. The tree of life theory. you know. The tree of life theory is a theory. Yep, once again, we're running it off of theories. Scientology, we're basing it off of theories. Still not proven a fact to this day. But yet again, a theory that you and all these multiple organisms descend all from one organism. All the way into a monkey, and then you evolve from a monkey because you're just insignificant. You know, you're just ascended from, you know, a big bang all the way from a monkey. You're just, you know, you're not special. You're not, you know, they don't want you to know you are descended from God. You are, and they don't want you to know you are God's image. They don't want you to know, they don't want you to know you are the image your consciousness has created. On to the next. The myth of authority. This goes back to the legal system, but, you know, the myth that the authority is legitimate and that it's legitimate because it's right, even though you live in a society where the truth does not matter. What matters is what successfully seeks approval, what goes along with the consensus, what goes along with the culture. You know, everyone wants to fit in. They don't want to be weird. They don't want to be mocked. They want to protect their egos. Because you live in a society where the ego, the self, ego is self, is constantly attacked. They want to demoralize the individual. Authority isn't just the legal police. Authority is the cult. And this manifests greater and greater with a sense of entitlement because of numbers. So the fake legitimacy of numbers, which is associated with legitimacy only if you are programmed into the math proportion of the public school system. Legitimacy in numbers is a psychological operated and manufactured from the school system. And the responsibility that you need to have, because if you don't do this, then some serious consequences are going to happen. You know, this is the only life you get. Completely false. On to the next. And of course, this goes to the government. The myth that the government is legit. There is no legitimacy in the government. Once again, the only legitimacy there is just the numbers. They are not right. If you look in history, if you look at every civilization, even ancient civilizations, basically, it boils down to whoever has the most power is the one who controls the food, the water, the money, and whoever has control over the weaponry. Whoever has the most weaponry. So you can't fight them. They either kill you with the weaponry or they take away your resources. So they're not actually legit. They just have more resources, therefore they control you. They control you with resources, not legitimacy. So what are they hiding? They're obviously brainwashing you into a obedient slave. They really don't want you to know some things, because if we all are on the same level and we realize we are all one in the consciousness, then they wouldn't be here. So they understand and we understand that we all have 5 basic senses. We have our perception. We have our perspective of reality. So this is what they go towards in order to manipulate us. And they know that we can only see so much. As you can see here, I have the electromagnetic spectrum. And the human can only see so much versus what's actually out there. So you can only see like 10% of what's really going on. You can't see the astral realm or the spiritual realm, whatever you want to call it. And this is a misplaced slide. Hold on a sec. So there are some powers here. We all know that placebo is a phenomenon that they don't want you to know is true. If you believe it, it will affect you. If you don't, it won't. This has to do a lot with energy. You can't see the frequencies. You can't see that everything's connected in the realm. But if you have energy, you have thought, because at the end of the day, consciousness, energy, and matter are all the same thing. So if you genuinely believe it doesn't affect you, then it doesn't affect you. They did a study where they made a surgeon made insertions into a knee to fix a knee. So the first group, he made insertions, he cut the skin and didn't do anything. And then the second group, he made insertions and actually did do something. He was a surgeon. And all the groups had the same effects. This is what pharmaceutical companies do to get results. They test it on individuals. And they say this will do this, yada, 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 and then they'll get the results. Because if you believe it'll happen, it'll happen. Because everything is connected. And they don't want you to know this. So what they have done is they have programmed you into believing that the ether no longer exists and that the appearance of matter can be measured. So they'd have an equation, and it's how much energy is required for the appearance of matter. So they can tell you how much energy is required for the appearance of matter. However, they can't tell you what an atom really is. They say, what is an atom? Well, it's got a nucleus, and it's got electrons and protons. Well, what are these electrons made out of? What is... And it goes, well, I don't know. We don't know what that's made out of. It all boils down to we don't know. It's just an electron and a proton, and it's spinning around. And we know it has a nucleus even though we can't see it under a microscope. But we have an equation, how much energy is required for the appearance of matter. And that's Albert Einstein's equation, which is an elite. It was a psyop designed to kill the ether theory. The ether theory is the theory that basically everything is connected. So they came out, destroyed ether theory, because they don't want you to know you can control your own reality. I'm going to move back to the placebo. They did an experiment with 3 jars of rice. And 1 jar of rice they talked good to. And then the other jar of rice, they surrounded it and did nothing. And then the other jar they talked bad to. And then the jar of rice they talked good to had little to no mold after a period. And the middle one had some mold, and the one that was talked bad to had a lot of mold. And so there is a negative energy corresponded to the things you say. There is a negative frequency that doesn't correspond to life. And they know this, so what they'll do is they'll tell you nothing is connected. And that this is false. So your consciousness is connected to the matter and the energy. And so now we're jumping into things like telepathy. You live with someone for quite some time, some couples. You can kind of predict what they're, you guys start to become in sync. And you can kind of read each other's thoughts. Or you can project a thought into their brain. Then you have remote viewing, which this isn't even a secret. The CIA has admitted to remote viewing, Google CIA remote viewing experiments. And this is where the CIA uses people to remote view and spy on the Soviets. This is where the consciousness leaves the body and uses map coordinates to go to a location and see the location. So we know we have a consciousness then that we can go out of our body. So if our consciousness is connected to the energy, then now we can jump into manifestation, which they really don't want you to know how to do. Because if you understand this, then this is when you can kind of start to create your own reality. And this guy becomes non-legit. Now on to the next. So dreams. So what do we do in dreams? We can sit on the sidewalk. We can feel emotions. We can be scared, We can fly. We can pretty much do anything we can in this reality. So there's obviously a conscious activity going on. So this body is projecting a reality outside of this realm. But what if this body is a projection of the consciousness? And if energy, consciousness, and matter are the same thing, then the conscious never dies. So are you really your body? Because obviously they told you that if you die, you go to heaven or hell. So there is a spirituality somewhere. But they infected your consciousness because they manifested your own consciousness. Because consciousness, energy, and matter are the same thing. And if you believe it, it will affect you. And if you won't, it won't. So it's complete BS. And so this leads me to the point. We never really die, is the point. You do not die. Not saying this is the dream, but I am saying this body is not you. I believe we are. You is the self, the ego, the consciousness, and you are infinite. If they can make you believe this is it, and this is the only chance you get to live, and you live once, then you're gonna make the best of it and chase things. And we all know what happens when you chase something. Chasing something is the opposite. Chasing something is the opposite of this. If you want to manifest something, you cannot chase it. You have to believe it. If they want to give you a virus that does not actually exist, they have to tell you, and they have to do some advanced programming here through both education and this guy. You know, virology is a science that is experimented with microorganisms on a petri dish. Now, I'm going to give you a test. I'm going to give you a question. The question is, what type of person invented the petri dish? Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. All right, time's up. A Freemason. Let that sink one in. Ooh, schizo alert. Ooh. So, which leads me to the final point of the video. Your reality is relative to you. I think that if you believe that you're going to go to hell, you might just go to hell. Because I don't believe any of I was free. I am free of these beliefs. Been free of these beliefs. Particularly this one. I do a lot of manifestation with the cops. I like to mess with them because they're just NPCs as well. But particularly this factor here, I've known this for years. And I can tell you, based on my own experiments, I think I got it right. I've done my own experiments. But don't take my word for it. Do your own experiments, because I'm just some guy. I'm just some schizo. Ooh. You know? Why don't you step outside of this cult? Because quite frankly, you know, it's not you. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. Take what you can. I hope you see what I'm trying to tell you. Hope the video made a full circle. And thank you for watching.